For the first time in 22 years, the Griffith University Knights have celebrated a big win after taking out the District Rugby Union's championships.
I can feel a storm coming, I can sense the air change, 'cause the sky is a-turning as the world's burning grey. The wind's breathing heavy, the dark clouds are closing in, so I run to the open, 'cause the rain is my friend. 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 I can feel the air changing, yeah, it's warm and it's thick, as the sun's disappearing and the clouds closing quick. I know what's a-coming, all my hair stand on end, and I run to the open, 'cause the rain is my friend. The rain is my friend. Rain, rain, rain. Rain, rain, rain. Rain, 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 rain. Rain, 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 rain.
2018 is going to be the year of the Knights.
All right. Yeah. Well, I must admit, I can't explain any of these thoughts racing through my brain. It's true. Baby, I'm howling for you. All right. There's something wrong with this plot. The actors here have not got a clue. Baby, I'm howling for you. Mockingbird, can't you see? Little girls got a hold on me like glue. Baby, I'm howling for you. Yeah. Throw the ball to the stick, swing and miss and catch us mid-strike too. Baby, I'm howling for you.
But this year, you know, we got together a great group of blokes, and we've been building over the last 3 years. So, boys, what a mighty effort today. And obviously the game wasn't much of a spectacle, but it was tough out there from both sides. So well done, boys, and let's celebrate tonight.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, one more hand for Griffith University Knights, our first grade champions, 2018.
Harry. Get the other bird.
All the best, Harry.
Go and go.
Harry, lead us on, mate.
Oh, and the Knights! Oh, and the Knights! Go marching in! Go marching in! Oh, and the Knights go marching in! Oh, what a day and a number! Oh, and the Knights go marching in! Oh, and the Knights! Oh, and the Knights go marching in! Go marching in! Oh, and the Knights go marching in! Oh, what a day and a number!